Welcome back to Flagstone Trail. And we're diving deep into the 48 laws of power
That's right.
and really trying to give you our listeners out there those like little nuggets,
The aha moment.
the aha moments like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that's what that means, and like how could I apply that to my life,
Exactly.
whether it's at work or in everyday life.
Absolutely.
And today we're talking about a law that's kind of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
It's Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark.
This is one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah, I love this one because it's so counterintuitive.
It is.
You would think that in order to be successful, you have to be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
But that's not always the case.
So explain this then. What's the kind of the central idea behind this law of playing dumber than your mark?
Well, the idea is that by making your target feel smarter than you,
Okay.
you disarm their suspicion.
Okay.
And you open up avenues for deception or manipulation.
It's like you're kind of giving them a false sense of security.
Exactly. And it plays on a very basic human weakness, which is vanity.
Oh, yeah. We all have that.
We all want to feel like we're the smartest person in the room.
Especially when it comes to, business or negotiations.
Exactly. And so when someone comes along and makes us feel like we
We let our guard down.
let our guard down, we become less critical.
We're more susceptible to their suggestions.
Precisely.
I'm starting to see the wisdom in this.
Yeah.
But I'm also a little terrified, frankly.
Well, it is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for evil.
Right.
So it's important to understand the nuances of this law.
Well, let's get into some examples because I think that will help.
Sure. Yeah.
So is there like a really good historical example of this playing out in real life?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most famous examples is the diamond mine con of 1872.
Okay, a diamond mine, what is this?
So there were these two prospectors named Arnold and Slack, and they convinced some of the sharpest financial minds of the time
Mm-hmm.
that they had stumbled upon a diamond mine in the American West.
Okay, were these guys like actual prospectors or were they...
Well, that's the thing. Their backstory was likely part of the con.
Okay.
These guys weren't your typical rough and tumble miners.
Right.
They understood human nature,
Oh.
especially greed.
Got it.
And they were masters of deception.
Masters in deception. So what did they do?
So they salted a mine with real diamonds.
Salted a mine, what does that mean?
So they planted diamonds in an
Uh-huh.
existing mine
Okay.
to make it look like a real diamond mine.
Oh, wow.
And they brought in these authentic experts,
Like geologists and stuff?
geologists, mining engineers,
Oh.
and these experts got caught up in the hype.
They didn't realize that the diamonds had been planted?
No, they didn't. And, diamonds were very rare at the time. And
Yeah.
so when they saw these diamonds, they kind of lost their minds a little bit, and they
Yeah.
overvalued the finds.
Wow, so the con men really played it smart.
Oh, yeah, they were brilliant. They knew exactly what they were doing.
So how did they use Law 21 in all this?
Well, they played the role of naive bumpkins to perfection.
Okay, so they pretended to be.
They acted hesitant, unsure, worried about being cheated out of their discovery.
Oh, I see.
They were like, shucks, we don't know nothing about diamonds.
Wow, and the investors bought it.
They totally bought it. They were like, look at these simple country folk. They don't know what they've got.
Right.
We can totally take advantage of them.
But it was the other way around.
It was completely the other way around. The con men convinced these big-time financiers, these guys who thought they were the smartest guys in the room,
Yeah.
that they were the ones with the upper hand.
Wow.
They sold their stake in the mine for an enormous sum.
How much are we talking?
Millions in today's dollars.
Wow.
And they walked away free and clear.
So they got away with it.
They got away with it scot-free, and the investors were left with a worthless mine.
That is a wild story.
It's an amazing story, and it perfectly illustrates the power of Law 21.
It really does show you how even the most experienced professionals can be manipulated if you appeal to their vanity and make them feel like they're in control.
Absolutely.
It's a good reminder for all of us to be aware of our own biases and to not let our egos cloud our judgment.
Yeah, never underestimate the power of perception.
I think this is a good place to stop for today.
Okay.
We've laid the groundwork with this great example.
Yeah.
And next time we're going to come back and really dig into some more examples and how we can apply this law in our everyday lives.
Sounds good.
I'm excited to get into that.
Me too.
So join us next time for more Flagstone Trail.
See you then. It's a fine line, isn't it, between, strategy and deception.
Yeah, like where do we draw the line?
Right, like how can we use this law ethically?
Exactly.
Well, I think the key is to focus on managing perceptions rather than trying to outright deceive people.
Okay, so it's not about dumbing yourself down.
No, not at all. It's more about choosing your moments to shine.
Okay, so like sometimes it's better to hold back a little bit.
Exactly. You don't always have to be the loudest voice in the room.
Right. Sometimes it's better to be a little more understated.
Precisely.
Yeah,
And by doing that, you can actually gain more influence in the long run.
I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
So give me an example, like how would this play out in a real world situation?
Okay, let's say you're in a meeting
Yeah,
and everyone's throwing out ideas.
happens all the time.
Right, and everyone's trying to prove that they're the smartest person in the room.
Yep.
What if instead of jumping into that fray,
Yeah.
you hang back a little bit?
Okay.
Listen carefully,
Yeah.
ask insightful questions.
You kind of gathering information.
Exactly. You're understanding everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
You're maybe even spotting weaknesses in their ideas.
Yeah.
And then when you do speak up,
Yeah.
your contribution is going to be much more impactful.
Because it's more informed.
Exactly. You're not just adding to the noise.
Yeah.
You're actually steering the conversation.
So it's kind of like picking your battles
It is.
and knowing when to assert yourself and when to kind of lay low.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes appearing less threatening
Uh-huh.
can actually help you gain trust.
How so?
Well, people are more likely to open up to someone
Yeah.
who seems genuinely interested in what they have to say.
So you're building relationship
Yeah.
by making other people feel heard.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that can be a very powerful tool.
That's interesting. So it's not just about getting what you want.
No.
It's also about creating a more collaborative environment.
Absolutely. Law 21 isn't about manipulating people for personal gain.
Okay.
It's about using your understanding of human nature
Yeah.
to achieve shared goals.
So it's a win-win.
Exactly.
Now, I can't help but think about some of the great leaders and strategists throughout history
Yeah.
and whether they use this law.
Did they?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the best examples is Otto von Bismarck.
Oh, Bismarck.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the Iron Chancellor of Prussia.
That's right.
A brilliant strategist. Yeah. He was a master of real politics.
So how did he use Law 21?
Well, there's this great story about how he needed Austria
Okay.
to sign a treaty
Okay.
that was very favorable to Prussia, but not so much to Austria.
Yeah.
And he knew he had to be clever about it.
Okay.
So he did some research on the Austrian diplomat
Uh-huh.
who he was dealing with, a guy named Count Bloom.
Okay.
And he discovered that Bloom was a passionate card player.
Interesting.
Yeah, Bloom even believed that a person's character could be revealed through their card playing style.
Oh, wow. Like you can tell what someone's really like by how they play cards?
Exactly.
Okay, so what did Bismarck do with this information?
Well, he invited Bloom for a game of quizzins.
Quiz, what's that?
It's an old card game.
Okay.
Kind of like a trick-taking game.
Right.
And they played the night before the treaty negotiations.
Okay, so the night before they had to like sit down and hammer out this deal.
Exactly.
For playing cards.
They're playing cards, and here's the thing. Bismarck purposely played recklessly. He did. He lost hand after hand.
Wow.
He was basically putting on a show of being impulsive and easily manipulated.
So he was playing the fool.
Exactly. He wanted Bloom to underestimate him.
And did it work?
It worked like a charm. Bloom, watching Bismarck's recklessness,
Yeah.
probably concluded that he was dealing with a hothead
Ah,
who could be easily outmaneuvered.
I see.
So when it came time to discuss the treaty the next day,
Yeah.
Bloom probably felt very confident.
That he had the upper hand.
Exactly. He thought he could outsmart Bismarck.
Right.
But of course, Bismarck had planned this all along.
He was playing 4D chess.
Exactly. He used this carefully crafted persona
Yeah.
to lull Bloom into a false sense of security.
And Bloom signed the treaty.
He did. He
Yeah.
signed the treaty without fully grasping its implications.
Wow. So Bismarck really understood the power of playing dumb.
He did. He knew that sometimes it's more advantageous to conceal your intelligence.
Than to flaunt it. This is incredible. I mean, it's like those stories where the unassuming character ends up outsmarting everyone else.
It is.
But there's a part of me that's thinking like,
Yeah.
wasn't Bismarck worried about appearing incompetent?
That's a great question.
I mean, he was a powerful leader.
He was.
Shouldn't he be projecting strength and intelligence?
Well, that's the thing about Law 21.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
There are definitely times when you need to assert your intelligence and your authority.
Like when you need to inspire confidence.
Exactly.
Or, demonstrate expertise.
Right. But there are also times when a more humble approach can be surprisingly effective.
It's about reading the room
It is.
and
Yeah,
knowing when to play each card.
exactly. Yeah. It's all about being adaptable and knowing when to, dial it up or dial it down.
So how can our listeners out there apply this law ethically in their own lives?
That's a great question.
What are some takeaways, like practical takeaways that they can use, starting right now?
Okay, well, let's say you're trying to get buy-in for a new project at work.
Okay.
Instead of overwhelming your colleagues with data and, complex arguments,
Right.
what if you started by asking them about their pain points and challenges?
Okay, so you're kind of showing genuine interest.
Exactly.
And you're creating a space for them to feel heard and understood.
Right, and then once you've established that connection, you can subtly weave in your ideas as potential solutions to their problems.
So you're kind of, leveraging their input and their expertise to make them feel like they're part of the solution.
Precisely, and when people feel like they've contributed to an idea, they're far more likely to support it.
That's a great tactic. I love that.
It's a very subtle way of using Law 21.
It is. It's like you're leading from behind.
Yeah.
You're guiding the conversation without dominating it.
Exactly. And again, it's not about being manipulative.
Right.
It's about finding a win-win solution.
Where everyone benefits.
Right.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there are times when you actually need to project intelligence, not downplay it.
Right.
I think you mentioned Joseph Duveen.
Oh, yeah. Duveen was a master at this.
He was an art dealer, right?
He was the most successful art dealer of the early 20th century.
And wasn't he, super influential?
Oh, yeah. He sold to all the big collectors, J.P. Morgan, Henry Clay Frick.
Wow.
And he was a master of using his knowledge and authority to influence perceptions.
Okay, so how does this tie into Law 21?
Well, remember that story about the skeptical art critic?
The one who questioned the authenticity of a painting that Duveen had just sold for a small fortune.
Exactly.
I love that story.
It's a great story. So Duveen could have argued with the critic.
Yeah.
He could have tried to, present evidence to support his claim.
Right.
But instead, he did something much more clever.
What did he do?
He used his reputation and his expertise to shut down any doubts.
So he kind of turned it around on the critic?
He did. He basically said, look, I've been doing this for years.
Yeah, I've seen it all,
Right.
and you're just wrong.
Wow. So he used his intelligence as a shield.
Exactly. He projected an aura of confidence and authority.
That's incredible. It's like he was saying, don't question me. I'm the expert.
Exactly. And it worked. The critic backed down.
Wow. I mean, that's a bold move.
It is, but it's a perfect example of how projecting intelligence can be a very effective tactic.
So it's all about knowing when to play dumb and when to play it smart.
Exactly. It's about reading the situation, understanding the dynamics at play,
Right.
and adapting your approach accordingly.
It's like having a whole toolkit of different strategies.
And knowing which tool to use for the job.
I love that analogy. Yeah. That's great. So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to encourage our listeners to think about how they've seen Law 21 play out in their own lives.
Yeah.
Have you ever witnessed someone use this law to their advantage?
Right.
Maybe even without realizing it.
Yeah. Have you ever found yourself instinctively employing this tactic? It's really all about being more aware of how we're perceived.
It is.
And how we can use that to our advantage.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it for today.
Okay.
This has been a fascinating discussion.
It has.
And I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot.
I hope so.
We've really just scratched the surface of Law 21.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
But we've given you some good food for thought.
We have.
So thanks for joining us on this journey through the 48 Laws of Power here on Flagstone Trail.
See you next time.
And that's it for today's Flagstone Trail discussion. We appreciate your listenership